Hello everybody, I am Conquering History Games, and welcome to what is starting to become an annual tradition on the channel, where I talk about my top campaigns that I did here in the year 2019. I do encourage you all to go back and watch my 2018 video, which I will link in the description below, so you can get a sense about what this series is about. It's essentially that I go over what I feel were my favorite or most interesting campaigns over the course of the year and encourage you all to go back and watch them, many of which will sometimes still be in progress. My one rule that I really have for this, for whenever I go over my top campaigns of the year, is I do not count ones that I started in the prior year. So, for example, there were some Kaiserreich campaigns in version 0.8, which many of you know is the United States of America Civil War rework. Those were begun in 2018, and I went over them in my 2018 Best Campaigns series, so there's no need for me to do that again here. There's going to be a lot of cuts in this one, just like there were last year. They're not going to be fading in and out, unfortunately. Sorry if you liked that effect, but just by doing hard cuts, it's going to make this easier for me, and it's going to be long enough as it is. So the reason it's going to be pretty long is because there's actually 20 campaigns that I want to go over. The first 10 I'm just going to go over very, very briefly, probably less than a minute each. And once we get to the, probably less than 30 seconds each, really. And then once we get to the top 10, I'm going to start going into more detail. I hope you'll forgive me. None of this is going to be scripted, so I apologize for any verbal miscues that I make. So coming in at number 20 for my top campaigns on the Conquering History Games channel in 2019 was the one that you've been looking at since this video began. This is Crusader Kings 2, my Legacy of the Indo-Norse campaign. This is where I played as many people's favorite characters. One of my favorite characters, Heistin of Retz, where I showed you all how to successfully get to India and form a kingdom with a Norse capital. This was a very short one. It was only 4 episodes long. Unfortunately, Heistin didn't make it, as you can see here, but we did manage to successfully complete it. But if you're somebody who's really interested in just how far you can take a prepared invasion in the 867 start, I definitely encourage you all to check it out. And it's not the only time I've used Heistin, but it's definitely one of my favorites. At 19 on the list, we have here Hearts of Iron 4 Equestria War Campaign, where I played as the Jaki clan, which will inevitably get into the war with Yak-Yakistan for dominance of the who is going to be the head Yak nation in Equestria. As you can tell, this was early in the year because we're still dealing with the human 3D models in Equestria at war at the time. This is actually just a one-part series. It's a little bit under 2 hours long. I just recorded it in one single large video. But I find it interesting just because it actually shows a formidable nation that you could create in Equestria at war. So we went from being the Jaki clan to being the Jakistan kingdom to eventually being the Yak Khaganate. So if you're somebody who's into your nation changing and growing in certain ways and getting different sorts of cores, it's definitely something that I think you would like. Coming in at 18, and really I probably should have put this higher just because how you have to play things at the start, is another Hearts of Iron 4 Equestria at War campaign. This is the one where I was playing as the Longsword Governorate. Now, those of you who play Equestria at War may already know that the country of Longsword will very quickly in the game devolve into a 3-way civil war, which is extremely difficult to win as any of the 3, but especially if you are not playing a Starry Knight, who is the pony head of the Socialist Republic of Longsword. However, I chose to remain playing as Dusk Talon, who I personally feel is the most difficult of the 3 factions to win the Longsword 3-way civil war as, and I not only managed to win, but I eventually transitioned over to being led by Rosa Heidenreich, who I then, under this new Longsword Governorate, basically a bandit kingdom, I went and expanded quite a bit throughout central and northern Griffonia. That's what it's called, Griffonia. There were some interesting mechanics that were at play in this campaign, particularly in relation to the bandit and looting mechanics. But if you want a series that has a very intense early game, as well as some interesting things that are being used in the middle and late game, I definitely recommend that you check this out. I'm not going to say that it was a perfect campaign. It certainly wasn't. But I think that there was enough interesting stuff there that you will be entertained by it. Number 17 brings us to my Crusader Kings 2 Defender of the Holy Sepulchre achievement run. This was just another quick little campaign similar to my Crusader Kings 2 Legacy of the Indo-Norse one, where I was going for the achievement where I had to get a historical Defender of Jerusalem, or I should say somebody starting as Eustace de Boulogne in that family as the winner of a crusade and the King of Jerusalem. So this series also makes itself into a nice little tutorial as to how to become King of Jerusalem, even if you're starting as just a single county count. And how you could do that in a very quick manner, because this campaign does start in 1066. It is required per the terms of the achievement. But I think things, even though there obviously there's a little bit of an element of randomness at play. If I'd had a little bit better luck, I think I could have probably very easily have become King of France in the short time that I'd had available before I even attempted to put my family on the throne of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. So if you're somebody who's looking on how to do a successful CK2 actual Crusader Kings run, this is the way, this is probably the series for you. It also was a bit of a warm-up for me, because one of the things that I plan to do early in 2020 is, and I've talked about this elsewhere, is do an Empire of the Outremer run. And yes, I know that there's ways to cheese it, for example, where you can play as the Seljuks and form the empire, but I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way, where I will be beginning as a Catholic Christian ruler, eventually put my family on the throne of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and then expand it out, destroy the caliphates, and form the empire and gain the bloodline of Outremer. And I'm also going to simultaneously be doing the Survivor achievement when I do that, so that means I'm going to do a full game all the way from 1066 on until the end of the game. So that could prove to end up being the longest, maybe, campaign in my channel's history. So if you're into CK2, especially like kind of traditional CK2, but with some of the new Holy Fury and more mechanics, the Bloodline mechanics, look forward to that. And this is a nice little preview for that series. Number 16 was my Collective of Austerion campaign in Hearts of Iron 4 Equestria at War. There's not a ton to talk about here. One of the things, though, that makes it unique was that I was playing as the Minotaurs. Obviously, most people play as either the ponies or the griffins. Some people play as the diamond dogs and things like that. Of course, now we have even more dogs because of an update that happened after this. This was a little bit later in the year than that Yak-Yakistan campaign I showed you. Excuse me, not Yak-Yakistan, the Jackie Clan. This was a bit later because, as you'll see when I'm zooming in on some of this footage, the ponies models have been implemented. Of course, nowadays we even have griffin models, so the Equestria at War team just continues to impress, continues to just show how amazing they are. But this was just a solid little going from a minor nation to a major nation campaign, establishing greater Minotauria. And I think I did a pretty good job of it. So if somebody who likes to see that minor to major, become regional power sort of gameplay, that's one of my favorite ways to play. I like to start small in these sorts of games. Then check this one out. Here at number 15 is yet another Hearts of Iron 4 Equestria at War. It's such a great mod. If you haven't checked it out, you're missing out. And hey, that's your loss. That's what I tell people. If you don't want to play Equestria at War because you have a problem with the portraits, that is your loss. So this was another tutorial style campaign where I played as Olenna, although I'm trying to remember if Olenna... Was this before or after Olenna got updated this year? But the point is, it's a really common question you'll see in the Equestria at War community where people ask, well, how do I win as Olenna? And so what I decided to do was take the communist path of them, and because I personally feel that is Olenna's weakest path, because you have no allies or anything, and you have to fight a civil war. And I showed, it was basically a tutorial on how to hold off the changelings and then successfully take to the offense against them and win. And again, I want to emphasize there was no use of allies here. I didn't ally with Stalingrad. I didn't wait for Equestria to come in, although actually, if I remember correctly, Equestria could have come into the war without me calling them in, and they just chose not to help me. So, so much for Celestia the Magnanimous, or whatever you want to call her. But it's a great campaign if you're interested in learning about how to set up a solid defensive line and really min-max your resources. I'm not much of a min-maxer typically, but I'm very pleased with how I did in this campaign, because there were things that went wrong. There's always a little bit of a randomness that's going to come in any grand strategy game. You can't plan for everything all the time. And even considering the things that went wrong, this campaign went very, very right and went very, very successful. So if you want that tutorial on how to do that, go check this out. At number 14, we have the Kingdom of Hellquill, again in Hearts of Iron 4, Equestria at War. This is the other Griffonian sort of pseudo-religious knightly order that is bordered between the remnants of the Griffonian Empire and the Pony Riverlands to the east. I played some of those Riverlands in 2018, and so in 2019 I wanted to play the two holy orders basically in a fascist way to counteract the Riverlands ones. Although I still have not done Lake City, I need to get on that. So anyway, this was one of the ways that you could go from being a minor Griffonian nation to eventually establishing yourself as the new Griffonian Empire. I did not make myself subservient to it. I played this game and eventually turned myself into the new Griffonian Empire. Even in this footage that you're seeing here, you can see that I was able to blob very, very big, and it only got bigger. Heck, I eventually became the Empire, right? But I did this with, of course, limited resources. If you look at my recruitable pony power in this footage, for example, you're seeing I'm only getting, I've only got about 20,000 in reserves here. One of the things that I think makes the Griffonian Empire, and it's supposed to be that way, really strong, is because you have so much recruitable power, so much recruitable population at the start of the game, because you already control the core of the traditional empire, and it's really easy for you to gain more of it and continue to core. You have all these industrial centers that are yours, you have all this recruitable population that is yours, so it's relatively easy to do it as the actual empire. I personally think it's much more fun to start outside the empire and have to fight it, and then you take that mantle for yourself. There also, of course, was the Grand Crusade against the ponies, the Pony Plague, the Purple Plague, it's got a few different names, I think. That happens in this campaign as well. So we've got some interesting mechanics and triggered events that go on in here, too, if you're interested in that sort of thing. Here at 13, we've got my Medieval 2 Total War Byzantine Empire campaign. I really wish I could put this one higher. I originally started this campaign as a parallel campaign to the another Byzantine Empire campaign that I was doing in Crusader Kings 2. Unfortunately, this one just sort of got away from me, and I'm going to continue to upload it. I do promise that. I have dozens of episodes of this series already recorded, and I just haven't been taking the time to upload it. Now, I'm not showing you, because I know not very many people have seen this one. This is probably either my least or second least viewed series of the ones that I'm talking about on this list. But basically, it's just like when you start in the High Middle Ages or the Alexiad bookmarks of Crusader Kings 2. I had to deal with the Turks early, and then I'm still surrounded by enemies, the Hungarians, the Venetians, the Egyptians, and there's a whole lot to do. This was a long campaign. I wasn't doing this short campaign style. So there are some pretty lofty goals that I have to accomplish, such as I think I have to take Rome to complete this one, and it just basically got away from me because it's not as if Medieval 2 is going to be updating anytime soon. It's not like when I'm playing modern Paradox games where I get worried about an update breaking a save file. With Medieval 2, I know the save file is going to be there, so that's why I haven't prioritized it as highly as I should have. And there are people who do watch this series and have enjoyed it, and I do want to apologize that it hasn't been uploading. I'm going to continue to do it, and there are some amazing battles, some amazing beating of the odds that go in here. I'm just showing a siege battle here for the sake of not spoiling things. This is actually an attack on Constantinople, if I remember correctly, this particular footage. Alright, number 12, we're moving back to Hearts of Iron 4 Kaiserreich, where this is my Empire of Brazil game, which I gotta say, at the time that I was releasing this, I was really surprised at just how popular this campaign was, and just how well received it was. I'm always happy to see that. I thought that people generally don't like campaigns in South America. I don't know why. It's just as well developed, if not more so, than other areas of the Kaiserreich world. In fact, there was a while there before the American rework last year where there were more countries with unique focus trees in South America than there were in North America, even when you count break-off nations like Hawaii and New England and stuff like that. And you also have to remember that those are the old versions of a lot of those focus trees, so those were lower quality. So no offense, well, obviously the devs thought they could do work because they did work on them. So I tried to take this in a different direction. Obviously, I took over a lot of Latin America. I established myself as the preeminent powerhouse in the Western Hemisphere, but I also took the fight into Africa, which you're seeing some of the footage here. I decided maybe Brazil's the one who needs to go colonize things. Of course, Portugal is not safe. Don't worry about that. And I did take the fight to Europe. And I think that I established Brazil as a really preeminent major power in the world, if not the most powerful nation in the world. I think so, and it went really well. And I was just very, very happy with how much people liked it, because the Empire of Brazil has been done before, but people really, really liked it, and I'm always happy when you guys are happy. So, moving on. So for the last of the not top 10s at number 11, we've got some Hearts of Iron 4, specifically Moe Reich, the anime portraits and just anime art sub-mod for the Hearts of Iron 4 Kaiserreich universe. Always really controversial. People really, really love it or they really hate it. But I decided to do it as a gimmick to get some more people to watch this Bulgarian campaign, which went very well. People don't really play Bulgaria, and so I think it might be something I'm going to do in the future when it comes to countries that people are less interested in. I'm going to throw on that Moe Reich, so hey, the people will go, I want to look at the pretty pictures, and then they realize, hey, this is a really well put together country. This one, I should have named this series Bulgaria Blobbing, because I blobbed just totally out of control as Bulgaria. Of course, you have to fight the Balkans War very early on, but then I decided I wanted to reform the Eastern Roman Empire, essentially, so I wanted to recreate its borders, and so you're seeing some footage of me working on that here. But I ended up going into the Western Hemisphere and also deciding to create some colonies, which that was I put one of those Western colonies I made in the thumbnail, and boy, that was confusing the heck out of people, and it was pretty entertaining for me. But a really fun campaign. It's a really interesting focus tree, internal affairs going on, having to deal with, for example, religious and cultural differences within Bulgaria. Unfortunately, and basically it was just a campaign that I ended up really liking a lot, just because I don't usually blob, but when I blob hard. And this one, I blobbed until I literally could not anymore. I had basically broken the game, and it was not allowed for me to annex things anymore. And so it was a lot of fun if you are into those sorts of things. I highly recommend that you check that out. Oh yeah, for example, see, here we go. Liberate Cyprus. Oh, I did liberate Cyprus on that one. Okay, so I think it was Anatolia. This was the one that I maintained the occupation, which of course takes away stability, war support, and political power. So as you can see, I'm already in the negative political powers, and if you do that stuff too much, you can never really recover. And that's eventually where I got. But it was a lot of fun, and obviously I highly recommend it. All right, now we are into the top 10. These are the heavy hitter campaigns on my channel for the year 2019. Coming in at number 10, we've got, once again, some Hearts of Iron 4 Stalingrad. Specifically, the Darkwing path for Stalingrad. I did promise a long time ago. For those of you who do not know, I'm actually in... I am a general, or at least I have somebody. I gave somebody my name in Stalingrad. I am General Victor Historia, who you can see at the bottom of this screen. I'm the field marshal on the right. Now, although I always tell people this, don't read into it like what it means for like how I actually look in real life, because people say like, why do you have an afro? Like, I don't have an afro in real life. I just thought it would be funny when they asked me what they wanted it to look like. I said, give it an afro, because I've never seen a pony with one. So I think that would be funny. And apparently there's a lot of people who actually think it's an Ushenka, because they're thinking, okay, it's the communist country, and it's some sort of black mass on the head. He's wearing a Ushenka, so that's funny. Anyway, moving on to why I think that this is a great one. I play Stalingrad repeatedly because of that, and I want to eventually go down every path. And so this was the second path I went down, where people typically do not go down Darkwing, because when you become Darkwing, you eventually become a puppet of Equestria. So people think that he's unplayable, and it's just a roleplay thing for the AI, where it's like, okay, that is a path they can go down, but there's no reason for a human to ever do it. And so they never actually keep playing. So I'm going to go ahead and spoil it here, because I spoiled it in the campaign, and I, it's been over a year. Everybody should know by now. Darkwing actually will break away from the inside, and so he becomes fascist. So it's possible to become a fascist version of Stalingrad. You become known as the Greater Equestrian Union, but of course you keep insisting that you're leftist, that you're communist. And there's a lot of interesting events, super fun focuses as you start to create the cult of Darkwing as you play as him. But of course you have to time things just right, because there's definitely no way that you're strong enough on your own to take on Equestria. So you've got to time things out with the changelings and stuff like that. But the betrayal is fun. The events are hilarious. You get the best general ever, Victor Historia. And I just go check it out. Go play it. Or watch it. Do both! Watch it while you play it. At number 9, we have my Crusader Kings 2 Never Fight a Land War in the Northeast campaign, where I was basically trying to accomplish 3 things at once. The first was that I wanted to play as one of the Sons of Ragnar. Obviously they're very popular characters, but I've never played any of them on the channel. And who knows, maybe I'll play all 5 of them sometime. So I was going with Ivar the Boneless, who is the one that starts in basically in modern day Scotland, in the kingdom. He's the king of the Kingdom of the Isles at the start of the game. And my cat is playing with something. Come here, you. He's making noise. Oh, Caesar, you silly cat. Anyway, so that was the first goal. The second goal is that I wanted to do the campaign where you rule the Kingdom of Mongolia as somebody who's culturally Norse. And then finally I wanted to go for the very difficult Never Start a Land War in Asia, which is qualified as an insane achievement on the Crusader Kings 2 wiki, where you have to control the entirety of the steppes as a character who has a primary title in Western Europe. So I thought I could kill a couple birds with one stone. 3 birds with one stone while playing as him. Now this is easily the least viewed campaign, by the way, on this list. I decided I wanted to do something different, and just to see how people reacted to it, and I used the Anime Portraits mod, which you can tell from here. Unlike Moe Reich, this just made the series DOA. People did not get into it at all. They immediately dropped it, and by the second episode it was down to triple-digit viewers, which when you've got 20,000 subscribers is a heck of a message that they're sending me. But I've decided I don't want to get into the spoilers, because this is a series that is ongoing, but I'm going to power through. I'm going to do the anime portraits. But I guess I learned my lesson. People really, really did not like it. But the ones who are watching it, I guess they're here to watch it. So I'm going to continue to go through this series. It's an achievement. I eventually want to have every Crusader Kings 2 achievement. I got to do this one at some point. But there's Germanic Reformation. There's interesting leaders, of course. It gets increasingly difficult to hold the empire together when my primary title is in the West, and I have to go further and further into the steppes. Obviously, I become overextended. Vassal limits are an issue, and it's just how do you hold that empire together while you're fighting land wars in Asia? You gotta stay tuned and find out, I suppose. But I'm sorry if you don't like the faces, but it is an interesting campaign. If you're just even neutral about it, I definitely say check it out. Coming in at number 8 for my top 10 campaigns of the year 2019 is, I think this is the newest of, no it's not, never mind, but this is one of the newer campaigns that is on this channel. This was my Christmas campaign, where every episode was uploaded on Christmas Day, although I do not play a Christian nation. Now, some of you are probably looking at this going, wait, this is Crusader Kings 2, but it looks so very, very different. This is the mod for Crusader Kings 2 called Pharaohs and Consuls, which I think people haven't been talking about. It essentially lets you play in antiquity, so you can play as ancient Egypt, which I did in this one. You can play as the Assyrian Empire. You can play in ancient Greece. You can go a bit forward and play in ancient Rome. You can play Caesar, for example. You can play as some of the kings of Judah, and on and on and on. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. A lot of interesting things they do with bloodlines, introduction of the culture groups and how the religions work, events, things like that. And of course, they're all historical characters for the most part. So you can play as certain people. You can play as Cyprus. You can play as jeez, I was blanking out for you can play Cyrus the Great and things like that. Or some of the kings of Sparta, who are very well documented and have their own bloodlines. You can play as Pharaoh Psamtik, who I play in this. And I was so happy with how people received this. I thought that, because people don't, in my experience, people don't tend to like change. When it comes to these grand strategy games, they're really wary of new mods, but people went all in on it so fast. And I remember I had already scheduled the campaigns to go up, and so the first one goes up at about 7 in the morning my time on Christmas Day. I'm not even home. I'm somewhere else, and I'm not going to be home I didn't get home for like 6 hours, and my phone just kept going off and off and off because I was getting comments from people saying, where's the link to the mod, where's the link to the mod, because I forgot to put it in the description, and everybody was super excited to play it, which is really that was really encouraging to me. So I do promise you, in 2020 we're going to see some more Pharaohs and Consuls. Obviously it was a really short campaign I did, so there's a lot more to explore than just ancient Egypt, and just go check this out. If you like Crusader Kings 2, but you wanted something with a little bit different flavor, I highly encourage you to check this campaign out. And if you already have and you liked it, I'm promising you more. So look forward to that. Next up, at number 7, we've got Hearts of Iron 4 Kaiserreich. So to West Africa. No, it's not. It's not. Okay, I caught my breath. Woo! Rip my sides. That was funny. If you thought that was serious, wow. Okay, number 7, we've got Hearts of Iron 4 Kaiserreich, the Garanganze / Katanga campaign. This was a really unique campaign in the sense that I don't see people play nations in Middle Africa, even though there's so many of them that have unique focus trees, that have unique events and decisions that come along with them. I never saw anybody play them. I never heard about people playing them, so I said, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. And so I took Katanga / Garanganze, which is one of the nations that in the modern day Congo that emerges from the blowing up of Middle Africa in Kaiserreich, and I decided to carve out a nation, an African nation for Africans, with a little bit of help from some Belgians. But it's really interesting. Obviously, it has its own unique focus tree. It's a different type of warfare than when you're doing big, sweeping tank runs through Russia or something. Smaller scale, but not too small. Africa is a big continent. Although, I think I once did see somebody was breaking down like where the equator, like if you actually put the line through the equator on a Hearts of Iron 4 map, the Northern Hemisphere is almost 2/3 of the map. It's really out of scale. But it was really interesting. I already said the unique focus tree was there. There's several unique events. They let you know what's going on internally with the country and the aftermath of the collapse. You've got different decisions that you can make there, and I eventually decided we're gonna have an African manifest destiny from sea to shining sea, west to east. I will control an empire, a brand new African kingdom in a country that is free and independent from a European overlord, and I did do that successfully. And no, it did not get as many views. I think it did get I think it passed 10,000 views, but it got a decent amount of views from people, and I don't think I ever got a message from anybody who said they were dropping it because it was boring. They tended to really like it, and I hope it encourages people to explore countries in Middle Africa in the future, because the devs do work down there, and much like I was talking about South America earlier, I think it tends to get underappreciated, and so you should definitely check that out. At number 6, we've got a very different game from a lot of the other stuff on this list. We're looking at not a Paradox game, not a grand strategy game, although it is a strategically based game. This is footage of me playing the Battle for Westnoth, which is an open source, meaning it's completely free game that's been in development for, I want to say something like 14 years now. It's a hex-based pseudo RPG. Turn-based, strategy-based game where you can play through these different scenarios. Although you can also play online, you can play against the AI. But I like to go through the scenarios, and you just got to defeat the enemy army, plain and simple. So it's a really interesting game because it takes into account all sorts of things like terrain, different creatures. So for example, this was a scenario called an Orcish Excursion where I played an elvish leader, because there's this whole fantasy world. I won't get into it right now. Go watch the campaign if you want to get the details of it, of the lore and things like that. But basically I'm playing an elvish leader who is repelling and then counterattacking against an Orcish force that has invaded his land. So you're mostly playing as elves. I was mostly playing as elves in this campaign. It's mostly against orcs. There are some humans that get involved over the course of the story. Again, I don't want to spoil the story, but it's a very interesting game that I am using the no randomness mod, which I think I've had one person ever complain about me using the no randomness mod. I just think it makes the game a little more skillful in the sense that you don't just get completely screwed by RNG or something. So even if you're playing perfectly right, you're still hurt by it. But there's all sorts of different. One of the things that's so fun is you just have this big variety of units. So we've already seen in action over the course of this footage, archers, fighters, druids. This druid, as you can see, just got upgraded into a Shaidi. So there's a unit upgrade mechanic, and there's a whole encyclopedia here, basically the Battle for Westnoth Health, where you could just learn all sorts of things about the gameplay and the flavor and just the enormous amount of work that they have put into this. This Orcish I don't know if I said that at the start, sorry, but yeah, this was the Orcish incursion campaign that I did, which is not the shortest one, but it's pretty short. It's only 7 scenarios. Most of them are double digit in length, because I just wanted to see how people were going to take to it. People who have been watching it, they tend to like it. A lot of them say they actually grew up playing this game, which is kind of funny to think about. Like, that's how old this open source game now is, that you could say, oh, I grew up playing this, and it has changed. If you've played Westnoth before, we're on different patches now. Things have been improved. Some things have been made harder. Some things have been made more, what's the word? Simpler, maybe, or it's just become an even more refined game. And I absolutely am going to play some more of it in 2020. So I encourage you all to check this out. I do, especially in the first couple of episodes, take the time to explain how the mechanics of the game work. So even if you are not familiar with this game at all, you're gonna pick it up really fast. And if I guess if people really wanted to, I'd be happy to make an independent video solely dedicated to explaining it. But it's a super fun game, easy to learn, difficult to master, and I sure haven't. But I'm trying my best, and I just look forward to things to some more of it, to some longer and different scenarios in 2020. And this is the series to watch if you want to get in on that. So we're in the top 5 now with a campaign in Crusader Kings 2, with the Game of Thrones mod implemented, where I play the Rogue Prince, Daemon Targaryen, my favorite Targaryen in the lore of the Song of Ice and Fire series. Something that I should note before I get into the details of this campaign is the Game of Thrones mod for Crusader Kings 2 is based upon the canon of the book series. It does not draw, to my knowledge, on the movies in terms of how things play out, people's relationship to one another, or if it does, it is only in very minor ways. So you should be warned if you're ever going to play this mod or watch somebody play this mod that you're going to get spoilers for things in the books. Of course, there's also alternate history going on, so who knows what is and is not a spoiler. There are also things that we do not have 100% confirmed, because just like George R.R. Martin has not completed the main series, he has also not completed all of his work in the prequels in terms of building up his world. But if you're somebody like me who does not watch the show, well, the show's over now, I think, thank goodness, so I don't have to hear people talk about it anymore. I'm getting off track here. The point is, if you're somebody like me who just reads the books, you don't watch the show, there's nothing that you're going to miss. So getting back to the actual campaign, I played Prince Daemon, who is, at this point, when you're watching this footage, is of Dorne. Now, I talked about earlier, I don't blob, but when I blob frickin' hard. And I think this entire campaign was, well, for all intents and purposes, this entire campaign was just played as Daemon Targaryen, who has a very high martial. He has a lot of great traits, and probably most importantly, he has a dragon, as well as being brother of the king. Now, I decided to play this. Some people, when they play Daemon Targaryen, they play it in a way where they say, okay, I'm going to try to kill my brother and get on the throne, the Iron Throne. I decided to play it in a way that Daemon is such a great man, he is going to form his own kingdom. And indeed, I did. This was essentially a world conquest campaign. I'm not going to go over what order I did things or how far I went, but from Westeros to beneath the shadow of Asshai, there was basically no place on Earth that did not have the wings of my dragon flying over it at some point. So there were quite a few Game of Thrones campaigns I did this year. For example, I did a Daenerys one, I did a Stannis one, I did a couple of others. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but this was by far and away the best one. And man, I kind of wish I thought I had some combat footage pulling up here. But there's a lot of interesting things that go on in terms of alliances between nations. As you can see in this footage, the Iron Throne is currently fighting a war, although I'm not involved in it, I don't think. At least not this one. And of course, like what's happening to the Targaryen family tree. It's also a campaign of, again, being a minor nation and becoming a major one, because I went with the Stepstone Wars start. So this was essentially when Daemon Targaryen begins the scenario going to war over the Stepstones, which are these tiny little islands you see off the peninsulas here. And they're basically worthless land, so when you take that, it means nothing. You essentially just have a very small army, but again, you have a dragon, and when you have a dragon, all things are possible. Anything could happen, as the philosopher Ellie Goulding said. And if you want to see anything and everything happen, I highly recommend you check out my Crusader Kings 2 Game of Thrones The Rogue Prince campaign. At number 4, we have my Crusader Kings 2 St. Thomas's Dream Achievement Run campaign in Crusader Kings 2. That's just repeating myself. Sorry, it's been a long video. So for those of you who don't know, the St. Thomas's Dream is a achievement that you can receive in Crusader Kings 2, where the goal is that you have to convert a kingdom or an empire in India to, like, every county in it essentially, to a Christian religion, meaning a non-heresy. So there's ways that I could have done this really easily. I could have just formed the Kingdom of Sri Lanka and I would have gotten it done in a couple generations, no problem at all. But I decided to do it in a way that I was trying to convert the entire continent, so it was less about the achievement run and more about a kind of a role play kind of thing. I played a family that was really moved by visiting the church at the community where Saint Thomas had founded. They took on the cross as a sigil and renamed their house Thomas, as you can see if you look at my character. This is one of my favorite characters in the campaign, Arulmozhi Varman II, who I ended up forging a bloodline with. It wasn't the one I wanted, but it probably was ultimately better for me. I wanted a certain one for roleplay. It just didn't work out. And this was a different kind of campaign because, yeah, there was expansion going on, but it was also about converting. It's about how you were changing the internal dynamics of your kingdom and eventually empire. As you can see, I did become an empire. And as you're also seeing here in this footage, I did not become Nestorian, which is how people typically do this. I actually became Messalian. Now you might be going, Conquering History Games, if you're Messalian, that means that you are a heresy and that cross should have been purple. Or purple pinkish. Well, you would normally be right, but that was yet another thing that happened over the course of this campaign, is I decided to go Messalian because it has its own benefits, because basically I went Messalian because by the time I grabbed the church, that county had become Messalian as well, so I went, okay, that's what we're doing. And that was another part of the game, was making the Messalian faith so strong that Nestorianism became the heresy. Now you saw a little glimpse there of the religious map mode. As you're seeing, there is a difference. There is a difference between my geographical borders and the religion's borders, and it's about expanding both. And neither is super easy. But it was and is very fun. I don't want to get too much more into... I've only been talking about things that have already been recorded and put up on the channel. There is more to this series, and I recommend that you at least check it out. See if you're into it and see if you want to join, come along and catch up, and then start to watch it live. At number 3, we have yet another appearance of Hearts of Iron 4, Equestria at War, the Yale Rectorate campaign. Now, I don't know if in this particular footage, I think I know where I'm at, but you're probably noticing in the top left, Conquering History Games, that is not the Yale Rectorate's flag, that is the Griffonian Empire flag. And yes, you're right, much like I was talking earlier about the Kingdom of Hellquill, where I went from the Knights into forming the new empire, I did the same thing here in the Yale one. However, I feel that this was a much more fun and interesting version because the the Yale Rectorate itself is very full of interesting events. It has its own sort of system of government and its own things going on. And the path that I went down, in particular, I thought was interesting, where the science goes too far, perhaps. The Yale scientists decide to play God and resurrect Grover II, who was an ancient ruler of the Griffonian Empire. As you can see here on the left, you've also got a research-focused program. So many interesting decisions, such a fleshed-out country. And we, again, it's that minor into major style of growth. But this is stuff that's not just blobbing for the sake of blobbing. There's storyline reasons for it. There's in their worlds historical reasons for it. It's essentially a reforging of an empire, but the one who basically forged it in the first place is an interesting kind of twist. As you can see, it's just an absolutely enormous focus tree. You can't see all of it at first, but you essentially are getting claims on the whole continent and then some. So it's not quite a full-blown world conquest campaign, but it's a most of the world conquest campaign. And if you are into that sort of thing, then this is, if you're into sci-fi, if you're into MLP, of course, you don't even have to be an MLP, actually, because you're playing a Griffin Nation, but if you're into sci-fi, if you're into restoring an empire, if you are into being a minor nation and then turning into a major one, this is one of the best examples. As you can see, you got if you're into, changing the color of your nation, getting a brand new skin, brand new name for it, and just going from when you're in tiny little wars where every single tile counts to massive continent spanning conflicts, then this is absolutely the campaign for you. Whoops, sorry, I had a little trouble. All right, at number 2, we have the youngest campaign on the channel. I think it will be at the time of you watching this video, and that is my Hearts of Iron 4 Kaiserreich Yunnan Clique campaign, where I begin as the Yunnan Clique and attempt to form the Republic of China. Now, that doesn't mean I'm never going to do the Greater Yunnan paths or anything like that eventually, but that's what people voted for. And without giving too much of a spoiler about how I got there, I will say that yes, I eventually do form the Republic of China. So you can rest easy watching that campaign knowing that I'm not going to lose, and you're just learning how to lose. No, you are learning how to win. You are learning how to forge China for the Chinese. One of the things that's interesting, as you can see here, you might have noticed that my country has changed colors. The new China, I don't want to get into everything that makes the new China rework so amazing, but it can just be such a free-for-all, changing factional alliances, changing names of countries, changing colors, changing situations, flip-flopping between different political ideologies, trying to grow an army that's strong enough to not only fight your fellow Chinese, but also you have the shadow of the Japanese looming over you. There's just so many obstacles to overcome before you even take into account the international situation with the Entente and the Reichspakt and all that. And it's all been done so brilliantly, not just in terms of warfare, but of documenting its internal struggle, not always making a civil war be a literal civil war, but something that you have to fight through with events, because you do not always need the tags. Sometimes you just need to be showing that there is a conflict going in. And I don't know, maybe some people want 1 million tags in China so that their computers just explode, but I'm fine with the creation of demilitarized zones personally. And it's just, yeah, it's just all been so well done. However, I cannot condone making this my number 1 campaign for the year because there are bugs. This was the first thing I did, the first China campaign. I played it the day it came out. As soon as it came out, I got started recording this. And so there were a couple of little bugs that slipped through, nothing that was a serious problem where I couldn't finish the game, but there were issues. And so that stops it from being number 1. But just like I was talking about in the Electorate, if you want to see a minor power turn into a major power, if you want to see a change in the warfare where it goes from every tile matters, because especially when you're playing Yunnan, that terrain can be a killer, to where you have huge armies of hundreds of divisions sweeping across a continent. And of course, everything that comes, all the usual Kaiserreich stuff is there, all the fun and games, but you're also experiencing all these new focus trees, the new events, so many new decisions, and there's so many events without spoiling things, of course, but I was really getting into the 40s. I'm not even talking about 40, 41, past that. And I was still getting pop-ups regarding the internal affairs of my country, and it just really made Yunnan, and I'm sure all the other Chinese nations are like this, but it made Yunnan feel so alive. It's not just about, I'm gonna take the color of this paintbrush and a blue in this case, or red, and I'm just going to paint the map that way. No, what else is going on inside? How like when you're uniting China, where's your capital going to be? What kind of culture are you developing? Are you going to create a racial hierarchy? Are you creating an egalitarian empire? What are the subtleties of your political thoughts? What kind of monuments are you building to people? Do you want to build a monument to Sun Yat-sen, or do you want to build it to Sun Yat-sen and somebody else? Because then what kind of message are you saying by having another war monument or having a monument in your capital to somebody besides Sun Yat-sen? And maybe some people could say, these events, they don't really matter. They're not giving you huge amounts of political power or anything. It's just flavor. Well, I love the flavor. Give me the flavor. What do they call it? Sabor. Give me sabor. I want it. It's delicious. More. And there's going to be so much of it, more of this China in 2020. I have 4 campaigns I plan on doing before 2020 is out in China. And that's just minimum. That's a minimum of 4. So keep an eye out on that. But I think the Yunnan Clique is going to be really hard to be better than. Like, it's already set a very high standard for me, and I'm expecting the rest of it's going to be hard. But I want to see if the rest of the Chinese nations can hold up to it. But Flame Fang and his team, they've done amazing work. I've always believed in them, and they knocked it out of the park. and yeah, there were some mistakes that do get made over the course of this campaign, but the way I see it, it's like anybody could play a perfect game. Not anybody can. I don't, of course, mean that. But what I'm saying is, I like to believe that when I make mistakes in my campaigns and then I overcome them and win, I'm teaching you guys how to get yourselves out of bad situations. So, if you're a Hearts of Iron 4 fan, this was my number one Hearts of Iron 4 campaign for the year. Came in just under the lock. And I think it's also here I'm saying I'm not going to go into all the China stuff, but here I go. I think it's also a testament to just how great the Kaiserreich team is, that in 2018 I had Yunnan, the version that's in vanilla Hearts of Iron 4, in my top 10 at number 10. And then Kaiserreich comes out with its version and it leaps up to number 2. That kind of just says it all. Anyway, thank you, and thank you very much for joining me. I'm Conquering History Games, and wait a minute. That was only number 2, though. What was number 1? I think most of you figured it out by now. The number 1 campaign for the year is my Crusader Kings 2, just plain vanilla campaign, where I do the Komnenian Restoration, beginning at the Alexiad bookmark. I take the Byzantine Empire and attempt to achieve several achievements, the SPQR, Restoration of Rome, Protector of the Holy Places, etc., etc. And as great as Hearts of Iron 4, especially when it's modded, can be at times, I don't think it is so hard for a Hearts of Iron 4 long campaign to equal a long Crusader Kings 2 campaign, just because because there is no focus tree. There are not war goals like there are in Hearts of Iron 4. I don't want to say that you're being railroaded whenever you play Hearts of Iron 4, but there is a certain path. There is a goal, and there is a track to get you to that goal. With Crusader Kings 2, it's chaos, and the chaos only grows with every passing generation. There's so many variables when it comes to your families, to bloodlines, to the religious things that are going on in the world, to the enemies and nations around you, cultural differences, and when you're going and so. I don't want to spoil the end of this campaign or say how far it goes, but this is the longest campaign I've ever done in my channel's history, by far. And if you haven't been following it, even the stuff that's already up, and I try to put up a video every day, has been unbelievable. This footage that you are watching here is from, I think, part 15, which is when the Pope had called a crusade on me, and so I'm fighting off all of Christendom desperately to, not die, and now we've become the Nicene Empire, and we didn't even make to 1204 like we did historically, we being the Byzantines. And this campaign has so many interesting characters that just get so wild at times. You probably noticed like it's 1143, but I already have France and England, and yet in this situation, my back is totally against the wall, and I'm losing this war. Fighting off Muslims, fighting off Catholic Christians, and just so much more. But yeah, this campaign here, the best character doesn't get born until here, part 15. I don't get my favorite leader until part 19. And so that's the great Alex M. Those of you who have seen this know Alex M is just the greatest ever. Interactions with China, as you can see here, having to fight multiple holy wars at the same time, attempting to forge new bloodlines. Sometimes those bloodlines don't go to the people that you want, and then things get tricky because you have to elect the right people. Of course, fighting with the Holy Roman Empire. I could just go on and on. This was such a... It was just such a wild campaign, where mistakes were made, where I'd fight a war and I would get defeated horribly, and it seems like I'm in a dark place. And now it's not just about restoring Rome. I'm wondering if can I even get out of this campaign alive? To where I'm waging multiple ones and an offensive capability, to where I'm doing we're, sometimes I'm fighting small little duchies, sometimes I'm fighting another empire, and there's tens of thousands of troops marching all over Europe. So many artifacts, so many societies, so many affairs, so many illegitimate children, so many amazing leaders, Alex M, Christophos, David, more and more I could go into. Just hundreds, if not thousands, of intangibles, all at play as I continuously am just trying to march toward greatness, toward the recreation of the Roman Empire, towards rebuilding those stoic intelligentsia societies and things like that. Civil wars, revolts, people breaking away from me, and on and on. I could just go, like, you just have to see it. You just have to see it for yourself. And yeah, I make mistakes and it gets frustrating at times, but I've never had a CK2 campaign like it. And it's the longest campaign I've ever done, but it's number one, and I think it's vastly entertaining for a reason. I think I was about some point in the 20s. There's a part where, I think episode 22, where I just sort of started talking out loud to myself, where I was saying, I don't think anybody's even watching anymore, because I pre-record this stuff. I said, I don't think anybody's watching this anymore. Because people typically, after about 10 episodes of a series, they just stop watching. And thousands of people watched that episode, and they said, I'm still here, because it's just a crazy ride, and you can't look away. I should have made notes. I'm probably just babbling now, but it's a terrific campaign. I can't speak highly enough of it. It's got everything you could want and more. if I could just express that in a humble way. So anyway, those are my top 20 campaigns for the year 2019 as we head into 2020, and I hope we have another great 20 next year at the end of 2020. Thanks for joining me. I'm Conquering History Games. As always, please subscribe, click the bell so you're notified whenever new things go up on the channel, such as these super long ones, although we might break the record with my Outremer campaign. It promises to be very long. I'm going to be doing the Survivor achievement, so it's going to have to be long. Maybe it'll be longer than this one. We'll just have to wait and see. But I hope you all are as excited as I am for 2020. Thank you all for everybody who's joined me, for everybody who's watched this. I know it's like an almost hour-long video that's essentially a highlight reel, but I hope it's also a suggestion. Maybe that there was some. Please let me know if there was something on this list that you didn't know I had on the channel. Because I sometimes get those messages. I say, hey, I didn't know that you were uploading this until I got a notification that you had uploaded part 13 of a campaign. And I said, when did he start that? So, anyway, I've talked quite enough. I'm going to go drink some water and stretch my legs. Thanks for joining me. I'm Conquering History Games. And I'll see you in 2020. Goodbye.